you have to understand that men are natural born fixers. That's what they're biologically wired to do. So I tell couples all the time, if you want better communication, one of the mistakes you don't want to make is assuming. So a man should not assume that he needs to fix everything, because that's holy crap, not true. And a woman shouldn't assume that she could just rattle on and on and on in great detail with all the drama associated with it and expect her husband or boyfriend just to do nothing. That's not how it works.
This is episode number 690 with Julie Nise. We're talking today about communication patterns that can destroy or create connection. Such an important topic. So exciting to talk about this because communication skills, one of my favorite things to discuss. Hi, everybody. I'm Sandy Weiner. I am a certified dating and relationship coach, and every week I bring you expert advice and real conversations about love, connection, and healthy relationships. At Last First Date Radio, we believe it is never too late to go on your last first date. For more information on my coaching programs, my courses, my books, go to lastfirstdate.com. And before I bring on my guest, I just wanted to give a shout out to my Facebook group. It's called Your Last First Date. It's for women over 40 who are looking for a positive place of support. So after you listen to this episode, head on over to Your Last First Date on Facebook. And now for my guest, Julie Nise. She is a relationship trainer and communication strategist known for her direct, results-oriented approach. She's helped over 8,000 individuals and couples through challenges in communication, trust, and leadership. And she has appeared on the Dr. Phil show many times, and she's also a regular commentator on NewsRadio KTRH in Houston. Welcome to the show, Julie.
Thank you. Lovely to be here.
We are going to talk today about communication patterns, how people screw up all the time. And we're going to focus a little bit on the differences between how men and women communicate and who they are. So let's start with, I would just love to know how you got into this field of relationships.
Well, it's pretty straightforward. I was in corporate America selling high-tech medical devices for the first half of my career and discovered that corporate America is not the place I wanted to be. It was getting more and more narrow and more weird. So I figured I was going to be 40 one day. Anyway, I might as well be 40 with a master's degree. And since I didn't want to take any more accounting, an MBA was out. So I went for master's degree in psych. And that's what led me eventually down this road.
Interesting. Yeah, corporate America can kill the souls of most people. I think that I remember I had a client years ago who was in a corporate job, and it really robbed her of her life. And she was in pharmaceuticals, and they basically owned her. I mean, it was night and day and never a break, and her life was not her own. So I can see why you would want to leave corporate America, and if you're not cut out for
not a hard decision.
Yeah. And also why you didn't want to take accounting. So you got into psych, and then you started working with couples, or you started with individuals?
I started just working as a therapist, which ends up being quite problematic because I don't believe in therapy. I am a licensed therapist, but therapists are not taught, as it turns out, how to problem solve. They're not taught to be outcome oriented or results oriented. They are taught to label and analyze and spend almost the entirety of their time with somebody in the past, where everything has already happened. And they have this weird belief that if you just yak up all that old negative feeling and emotion and go over and over the traumas and the dramas, that somehow that makes it worse. In my experience, that makes it better. In my experience, it makes it worse. And so I don't do that. And I learned early on that that's not the way to help people, in my opinion. So what I do is relationship training. And what that means is that we look forward, given all the things that have happened in the past. And by the way, there might be some things that I need to go back and resolve from the past. That's frequently true, but it's not to just talk about it endlessly with nothing ever happening about it. If you're going to bring up the past, it better to be resolve it, fix it, forgive it, move past it, or let it go so that you are free to act in whatever way you want to in the present and the future. So the present and the future is what it's all about. Hence the name Outcomes Only. That's my website. It's all about the outcomes. And whatever you're doing or saying better be pointed toward one of your goals, or it's probably either irrelevant or damaging.
I totally hear you on that. And I remember going to therapy many times and feeling like I am not really getting a whole lot out of this. And it's not to say that there aren't great therapists, but when I got divorced and I wanted to pursue a career in helping people in some kind of psychology related fields, I ended up in coaching for the same reasons that you ended up doing what you do,
Right.
because I believe in outcomes and I believe in goals and I believe in teaching skills and helping people to get from where they are to where they want to be. And often people say they want something and then they don't prioritize it. And so it doesn't happen.
Right.
Yeah. So I love doing work as you do that really helps people move forward and move the needle so that they can have better outcomes, have better lives. And we're going to focus today on communication, which is one of my favorite topics.
Mine
I
too.
would love, yeah, I can see that. What are some of the common mistakes that you see couples make in communication?
Well, for one thing, men don't understand women and women don't understand men. That's the first problem. Second problem is I think there's a lot of expectations that need to be changed around communication between couples, let's say. First of all, women, it's very important that they understand a man is not just like another woman or more muscular woman. They don't communicate in the same way. So for example, I hear women all the time say, "Well, he just doesn't talk a lot and he doesn't share his emotions a lot." Well, no, that's not who they are. Men don't share emotions the way we do. They don't talk as much as we do. They don't like to talk. In fact, God's divine sense of humor is we love to talk and they hate to listen. So, you can argue about that forever, but that's not very useful. So, what we have to do is develop a much better appreciation for the differences and not try and pigeonhole people into, thinking it's always got to be one way.
Okay, so yeah, this it's a little bit general to say all men and all women, and I'm sure there are
In
exceptions,
general,
but
always
yes.
exceptions.
And I agree that we approach each other thinking that they must think exactly the way we do and they must communicate the way we do. And so there's something wrong. And I remember doing some of Alison Armstrong's work and seeing, oh, we look at men as hairy women and they're not, and how there are some specific differences that
But
how they right. So let's talk about some of the specifics here.
sure. Well, so men usually, again, I'm generally speaking, there are always exceptions, but men generally communicate around things and tasks and activities. That's how they're comfortable communicating. Women in general are comfortable communicating, talking, literally verbally speaking. So there's going to be all kinds of mismatches. I would like it that the sexes get a lot better at the other way of doing it so that we can have meaningful communications back and forth.
A woman will share, let's say, a long story that's convoluted and has a million different details, and men lose interest quickly. They
Hmm.
can't track what the woman's trying to say, or they're like, "Well, do you want me to fix something here?"
Right. That's
So
very common.
yeah,
Very common.
yeah.
You have to understand that men are natural born fixers. That's what they're biologically wired to do. So I tell couples all the time, if you want better communication, one of the mistakes you don't want to make is assuming. So a man should not assume that he needs to fix everything because that's holy crap, not true. And a woman shouldn't assume that she could just rattle on and on and on in great detail with all the drama associated with it and expect her husband or boyfriend just to do nothing. That's not how it works. So I like it very much if either the woman would say, by the way, honey, I need to talk to you about something, and this is just a me venting situation, or I'd like to talk to you about something and I'd really like some input or maybe some ideas. Let him know. because they'll usually, they'll go along with that program. The man can also ask, is this a fix it situation or just you want a good audience?
Yeah.
But another really significant communication issue happens when generally there's sorting by distinction and sorting by agreement. So the way women's brains are wired, and there's nothing wrong with this, is that we generally sort by disagreement first. Meaning, as we take in information, our brains are going, well, yeah, but this or maybe that. We're trying to find differences or exceptions. For example, if I walked outside today right now and I walked up to 10 different women and asked them this question, it's kind of a nice day out today, don't you think? Pretty much 10 out of 10 times, I'm going to get, well, yeah, but it's a little cloudy, or yeah, but it's kind of cool, or yeah, but I think it's going to rain. And all of those things may very well be true, but it doesn't really take away from my bigger point that it's kind of a nice day outside. If I walked up to 10 men and asked them the same question, excuse me, I would pretty much get, yeah, it is, because they sort by agreement in their conversations. So it doesn't seem as necessary to men that we find the distinctions or the exceptions in what we're communicating. They are more into agreement. So if you're a girl trying to communicate with a guy, the first thing you want to do is leave the yeah buts at the front door. You don't have to, that doesn't mean you have to just blatantly agree with everything. But if you're going to disagree or come up with an exception, it's better done second and better to do the agreement first. Human beings tend to focus on what happens first. So, and I will share this. I actually have done this with my husband. I have a policy that no matter what my husband asks me to do, my answer is always, sure, you bet, absolutely. Yep. And that's frequently followed by, but I just need to finish this first, or probably would need to do that Sunday, or yes, but I don't think we can do it till next week. And he's fine with that because he heard the yes first. I could say, no, I have to finish this first. No, that'll have to wait till Sunday. No, we can't do it till next week. And that's also true. It's really what I just said. But because I put the yes first, they're good.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Actually, my friend's husband starts with no. Every sentence starts with no. Even when he agrees, he starts with no.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost like a tick. And
yes. It's a
yeah,
communication flaw for sure, and it should be corrected because that's just annoying.
it's really annoying. I had a meal with them and I was just observing and I was like, oh my God, I can't even stay here for very long because everything is no.
Right.
And it's like when we have that awareness, when we, yeah, but, or, yes, and like the improv, yes, and
Yes,
is
right.
it's a good way to go because a lot of people don't realize that they're saying no, that they're trying to fix, that they're doing things that actually push the other person away instead of bring them closer. These are really important distinctions, and picking up these patterns is really important. Any other patterns that you see with couples?
Sure. The pattern of being internal versus external. And again, generally speaking, women have a more internal orientation where men tend to be more external. But I tell people all the time, the single best relationship skill you can have is the ability to come outside your head, notice what's going on in front of you, and respond only to that. Because we all get caught up in our head with our distortions of perception and reality, because there is no reality really. There's just our perception, and that our perceptions can be wildly off.
So give us an example of how that might look.
Sure. Well, I just had one today. I was in the office talking to a new couple who's coming into one of my training programs. And even though I called this out, they kept doing it because it's a habit. So he says, well, I feel like this and this and this happened. And she said, no, it didn't. That's not the fact. She literally said, that's not the fact. That's not the way it happened. But the problem is, to him, that's exactly the way it happened. That is 100% reality to him. And her belief that it didn't happen that way and that's not factual is 100% her reality to her. Now, where the actual truth is, probably somewhere in the middle, but who cares? So the pattern that they are in is, yes, I did, no, I didn't. Yes, it was, no, it wasn't, which gets you nowhere. That's just an argument waiting to happen. What's much more important to do, to get out of that pattern, is to say, gee, that's really interesting. I don't think I see it that way, but I'm very curious why you do. That's what's called loving curiosity. You actually genuinely, lovingly care enough to be curious and find out why they think the way they do so that you can find where the middle ground is. But you're never going to find middle ground with, yes, I did. No, you didn't. Yes, I did.
I see a lot in my practice, the issue of politics comes up in dating, for example. So
Yes.
that's a hot topic. And I had a client recently say to me, I don't know how I would ever overcome that, like a political difference. And I said, what would happen if you got curious? If you found out why they believe the way they believe and what actually do they believe in, because it's not a one size fits all. Even if you don't align with that party or the person who heads that party, you're not necessarily aligning with the person, you're aligning with something. And so before you write somebody off for anything, you want to be curious. You want to ask questions.
Absolutely. Curiosity is your best tool by far, for sure. I 1,000% agree with that.
Yeah,
And also, and it's not just on politics, but there are a number of situations in a dating situation that you have to evaluate that might possibly be deal breakers. And what brings you together as a couple or brings us together as a community or brings us together as a nation is our similarities, how much we are alike, not how much we are different. So I think it's very important in a dating situation to be clear on whatever those boundaries are for you. And having anything that's diametrically opposed, there's usually always a lot of room in the middle, to your point. But if you find you're really diametrically opposed on anything, it could be religion or politics or child rearing or whatever, it's probably better to think that one through carefully because those aren't going to go away usually.
that's true. There are times when somebody will bring something up that you don't want to discuss, like somebody's ex, or how horrible their work situation is when you've just met them for the first time. And so I always recommend that people interrupt people who go on too long about things like that. Try to redirect the conversation to something that's a little more neutral, a little more values based, and not make it a whining therapy session.
Curiosity, I said, is your best weapon, and you and I evidently agree on that. Being very curious about somebody, especially in the beginning, like on a first date, you better show your curiosity, not your biases or your history. You want to show your curiosity. Loving someone is not about how you feel, it's about how you make the other person feel. And that better be demonstrated early on.
I agree. And if this is your best self that you're putting forth, bringing lots of very negative opinions and bringing the past with you, it says a lot about you as a person and how much unhealed wounds you have. And it's good that somebody shows you who they are, but also if you do interrupt and redirect and they get mad, that's also information, right? It's information that you should skedaddle. Let's take a quick break to hear from our sponsors. This episode is brought to you by Amazon Music Unlimited. You can listen to over 70 million songs and thousands of playlists and stations. Plus, you can now stream your favorite podcasts like Last First Date Radio. You can listen to any song, anytime, anywhere, on any of your devices. Get Amazon Music Unlimited for free for 30 days. Just head on over to getamazonmusic.com/last first date to learn more and claim this offer. We've talked about some of the patterns of relationships and communication and how we can begin to heal them. So we don't want to make assumptions. We don't want to set somebody up to fix us if we don't want to be fixed. So being able to express yourself clearly at the beginning of sharing something. And you mentioned that men communicate around tasks. Yeah, what does that mean?
Yeah. So a great day for a guy is to go do some task or activity that he likes. Fishing, bowling, hunting, whatever it might be. Watching a game. They like that. That is communicating to them. Women are often much more verbal. So to us, talking is important. However, I must say, the super secret thing I wanted to teach your audience about communication has to do with your senses. Pretty much everybody's heard of the five love languages, and it's a great little book, but there's a way to look at understanding communication patterns that's, I think, much more accurate. If you go with the idea that we use primarily our three senses, visual, auditory, and kinesthetic, that's touch and feel, to communicate, there's all kinds of things that become very clear. So this is innate, it doesn't change. And we can have, let's say, a kinesthetic strategy for communication, maybe in having sexual relationship, but have an auditory strategy in some other way. So you can flip around, but you really have one main one, and that's your primary one that your partner should know about, and you should know your partner's. So the way to answer this is, and we'll just do it for you with you for fun, so you'll be our little test case here. So I'm going to give you three options. They're all fabulous and wonderful, but one should bubble to the top as kind of your favorite. Okay? So if your partner was going to show you the best possible love and care in the way that was most meaningful to you, would they, number one, do nice things for you, like empty the dishwasher without asking, put the clothes from the washer to the dryer, bring you a little note, bring you a cup of coffee, just do nice things. Number two, would they talk to you, have wonderful conversations, be a great audience and a great listener, give you compliments, and be verbally very interactive? Number three, would they be great at hugging and holding and snuggling and cuddling and kissing and all that physical stuff? So they're all three great. Excuse me. Which one would be your favorite?
I think acts of service are my favorite.
The seeing, the
And
doing. That's not
the
acts of
doing,
service. It's
well,
actually
doing without me telling them to,
right.
emptying the dishwasher on their own.
But for a visually oriented person, it is what they see you do
Okay.
that equals love to them. So seeing you, so my husband is visual, for an example. So it's not a mistake. It's not an accident that when I have his dinner plate, I put it right down in front of him and say, there you go, because he can see it. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So with visual people, they feel love when they can see you do things. And it doesn't really matter what they see you do. To them, that's love. An auditory person, on the other hand, they feel love when they are heard and they're talking. It's a big deal. And kinesthetic people, of course, feel loved through physical touch. So if you don't physically touch a kinesthetic person, you can say, I love you a million times. You could run around the house doing all kinds of fabulous things. They're not going to feel loved.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, one of the classic patterns is you get a kinesthetic husband and maybe a visual wife. And so they got sideways. It's kind of her fault. So she's trying to make it up to him. So she's running around the house, straightening things up and putting stuff out, organizing here and getting stuff. And he's sitting on the couch going, what are you doing? Just come over here and sit next to me.
Mm-hmm.
That's what he wants.
Would you then recommend that we tell each other what we need if
Oh,
we know?
absolutely. Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, but people, because like I'm auditory, for an example. So I've walked around the world for the longest time, assuming everybody highly valued auditory things and verbal communication. They don't. A kinesthetic
Mm-hmm.
person doesn't matter a whole lot to them. And a visual person, similarly, it's what they see that means love, acts of love,
Mm-hmm.
versus what you hear or what you feel. It's very, very different. There's also even word choices depending on what sense you're using to communicate. So a visual person very commonly would say, oh, I see you. I see that. Yeah, I got it. I say, I hear you, because I'm auditory. A kinesthetic person might say, that feels right.
Mm-hmm.
And the tip off to knowing which one it is kind of interesting too. So a visual person, it turns out, they're actually seeing pictures in their head as they're talking. Like they literally visualize pictures of whatever they're talking about. So a visual person tends to talk very fast because it takes a lot of words to describe all the pictures that are going on in their head. They're the kind of the chatterbox quick talkers. An auditory person typically is kind of middle of the road, average in pitch and volume and speed. And kinesthetic people are much slower, noticeably, because what's going on for them is they are literally feeling the words they're saying.
Interesting.
So the funny communication, of course, is a really fast visual person talking to a real slow kinesthetic person. That can present a challenge. Yeah,
Oh,
but it's very
yes.
important to know which one you and your partner need to feel loved.
Hmm.
You know, somebody could be the greatest hugger snuggler in the world, or be super good at running around bringing me coffee and getting gas in my car and all that stuff, and I will appreciate all that, but it's not the same as if you talk to me.
Words definitely have meaning, and I'm a very much a word person. So I'm a combination. As you're talking, I would say auditory and visual are both very high.
Well, here's the trick to know, because obviously we could be a little bit of all three, but to figure out which your primary one, let's say you and your partner got into a tiff, it's all his fault. He really wants to make it up to you. You say you're visual, so he doesn't need to necessarily come and talk to you and apologize and explain what happened and talk it through. He really needs to do nice things for you. Is that going to make you
Yeah,
feel okay?
needs to talk it out.
That's right. So you're on. I thought you were.
Yeah,
And the other tip off is because visual people really truly do see pictures in their head when they're talking. I suspect that you don't.
I do. So I'm an artist. I'm an artist,
Oh,
and
okay. Well, that's yeah. Okay, that might be more from your artistic thing than your.
yeah.
Okay.
So
So you
I
probably have a
I
strong visual component.
I have an unusual kind of right left brain balance. So I'm a very organized, artistic, creative person, but without the chaos. Have you seen in your practice people who get along better with different strengths in how they communicate, and people who get along worse? Is there kind of a pattern that you see?
I think if the more they are similar, whether they're good communicators or bad communicators, the more that they're similar probably has more to do with the success. It's almost impossible to have, for example, a really great communicator and then somebody who's terrible because
Yeah.
they're both going to be enormously frustrated.
Hmm. Yeah, and that happens quite often when we have people who just shut down. And it's the way I am. It's just the way I am. Can you share a story from your practice of a couple that you've helped with communication? Like they started out one way and you helped them to communicate more effectively.
Well, that's my goal with everyone that comes in to see me.
Okay.
Because I call it relationship and communication training, because it really, at the end of the day, a relationship has to be about communicating. I recently had a couple come in, and she was this close to being done. I mean, really done. And he was desperate because he had been kind of walking around in a fog, not paying attention to essentially what she had been telling him for a long time, that she was unhappy and didn't like this and needed to have that. And he was of that old school where if you go to work and, bring home the paycheck and, you've done your job. So my training of him had to include the fact that your job is to make her feel safe and provide for her. And it's not only financial, it's physical, which in their case wasn't a problem, and also emotional. In fact, especially emotional. Because if women don't feel safe emotionally, we go into overdrive micromanaging.
Mhm.
And nobody likes that. Nobody likes that. So that's what she was doing, but she was fed up with it. So anyway, we had some very blunt discussions about what the options were because they didn't have many at that point. And I said, I'm going to give you the information you need to fix this. It's up to you to pick it up. And I mean, I was talking to him, you need to really run with this because she is just a moment away from walking away. And I don't advocate that because divorce absolutely does not solve most people's problems. In fact, it makes it worse. And the chances are, because you're going to take the exact same coping strategies, the exact same patterns and behaviors into your next relationship, that's why second marriages fail at a higher rate than first ones. So it's not a pretty picture. And of course, it's way worse for the kids and, everything else. So anyway, to his credit, he he got lit on fire and he started to make some huge changes, which fortunately were in time enough for her to take a second look and give him another chance. And she did. And now they're doing really well.
Beautiful. What kind of changes did he make?
Well, I taught him many of these same things. So the first thing was he had to really be curious about what she was doing, what she was thinking, how things were for her, because he really wasn't. He just said, okay, went to work, I did a great job, and here's the paycheck, and I'm done. And he really was kind of oblivious, bless his heart. But he's getting much, much better at it. And the other issue in that situation was they disagreed a whole lot on parenting. And that's one of those topics you just can't disagree on very much. That's really bad for the kids and it's really devastating for the relationship. But he was a complete softy. And so she became the disciplinarian. And he would even countermand what she was trying to do when she was disciplining the kids. And so they had an enormously spoiled teenage girl. I mean, enormously spoiled. Ran the house. And so when I finally had, he was good at taking blunt conversations. I got to say, he was a trooper. So I had a very blunt conversation about, no, you do not want to go drive and pick up your 16-year-old daughter's boyfriend and bring him to your house. No, you don't want to do that. Do you remember what it was like to be a 16-year-old boy? Well, yeah. So what do you think he wants to do to your daughter? I mean, come on, hello. What are you doing? And she's completely disrespecting everything, not following the rules, blah, 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 blah. Anyway, so it was really hard for them, but they finally got that situation under control. And it was essentially because he was open enough and mature enough to realize he needed to make some changes. And he, bless his heart, he dove in and he made them, and he's got things turned around. And she's actually very happy now.
And how's the 16-year-old?
Getting more and more under control. Yes, it was pretty far off the reservation, but she is, because they became a united front, and he wasn't wussing out and just letting her get away with all this stuff. He would stand with his wife, and he would make her do things, and the wife would discipline her and make her do things. And there wasn't any getting away with anything anymore. So of course the teenage girl was wildly unhappy, thought everything was awful. But the fact is she just wasn't allowed to get away with stuff anymore, and there had to be consequences for her behaviors, which she did not like. And we kept ratcheting up the consequences until we got her, she paid attention. We got her attention. And so now she's finally starting to surrender her defiance, so they don't have to send her out in the world as immature, defiant, self-absorbed, and pissed, because the only way that ends is in resentment.
So many people need to hear this message because there are so many kids who are being brought up by parents who are not in agreement. There's a lot of enabling going on, and it has such horrible consequences, and it's unsafe for the child. I think what people don't realize is that the child really doesn't want to get away with everything. It's very unsafe. I was that child. I was the child who I rebelled against my parents because they didn't make any sense to me. Their rules were pretty arbitrary and they weren't consistent. And so I would push back and they didn't know what to do with me. And then they would either do things that were really extreme and like you're grounded for life, or they would do nothing. And I think about that a lot when it comes to how I parented my children and how I've seen other people whose adult children are still disrespectful to them. And it's a challenge. I think we also need to see it from a child's perspective, that it's not healthy for anybody.
Children appreciate security and consistency. They do. They actually thrive in that environment. They don't thrive where the rules are inconsistent or they can do what they want. And the point I had to make to this gentleman was, you're only thinking about her getting to 18. I'm thinking about what kind of a life is she going to have after that. In her marriage, do you really want her husband dealing with this level of defiance and self-centeredness and acting out? To have no maturity at all to handle things? This does not end well. So this is a lifetime problem for her to be sent out in the world where she can't function as an adult.
If she can even have a healthy adult relationship. So yeah, what is something that people can do today to strengthen their most important relationships?
Well, I'm going to say curiosity again. Be very, very curious about what your partner tells you and feels without judgment. But like, don't be quick to jump in and go, well, that's not true, or I don't like that. Actually be a good audience. In a relationship, usually people are so worried about holding on to each other or somebody not leaving that they're missing the point. You shouldn't be concerned about your partner leaving. You should be concerned that you're hurting your partner. And we kind of don't have that as a value in very many relationships.
That's very profound. And if they're hurt enough, they will leave.
Every time.
It's a shame because it's all connected to our own internal pain and our own healing that has to happen.
And by the way, you should be doing everything you can to heal that pain, get over those traumas way before you get in a relationship. It's really so unkind to bring those in knowingly. I mean, we all bring in something, but not knowingly.
Yeah, most of us have no clue. I would say they were like, oh, we're good. We're so much better than our parents were. So we're doing really well. And then you get into a relationship and you're like, oops.
Whoopsie.
Yeah, there I am again. So, Julie, what are your final words of advice for anyone who wants to go on their last first date?
Well, I'm writing a book at the moment, which I hope will be out early next year. And the very first chapter starts off with the most important relationship that you have is going to be the one you have with yourself. So self-acceptance is a wonderful thing to strive for. And you can go on podcasts, you could read books, you can go into coaching or training or maybe therapy. I mean, there's lots of avenues for you to get that squared away. But your best bet to never go on a first date again is to be everything you can be as self-accepting and calm and flexible as you can be going into it, because all of the things you bring into it are going to be challenged along the way. And if you start off from a perspective of not being self-accepting, knowing, for an example, that you were born the exact person you're supposed to be and you have nothing to prove. So all these people coming into relationships that are people pleasers and perfectionists and all these things, it's just devastating later on. Know who you are, be very curious about who the other person is, and see how it goes.
The more you know yourself, the more you can heal yourself, the more you're not going to get triggered with the people that you date, and the more you can accept others. I mean, it's the people who are really the most challenged within who are the hardest people to love.
Right. And so being self-accepting means that you're not triggered anymore. It's funny that not everybody, a lot of people come in now and they describe their childhood situations as traumas. 30 years ago, that's just what childhood was. They weren't traumas. But we've elevated, anything bad. And people certainly do have terrible childhoods, and I get that. But everybody doesn't have a traumatic childhood. And so if you think you're being triggered or you have all these traumas, get rid of them, fix them, move past them, forgive them, let them go before you get into a relationship. It's just not fair to the other person because, again, we're not in a relationship for ourselves. You should be in a relationship because of what you can do for the other person.
Thank you, Julie. Tell us where our audience can find you.
Sure. It's very easy. I have a website called outcomesonly.com.
Well, thank you. Thank you for doing this important work and helping couples heal and communicate better and have the right skills to sometimes come from the brink of divorce to ending up together and not repeating patterns over and over again. So thank you so much.
You're welcome. It's such a pleasure. I appreciate it, Sandy.
And thanks everyone for listening today. If you love our show, please give us a high rating and review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. And as always, here's to your last first date. If you are ready to get unstuck, gain new tools, become more empowered, and finally find your last first date, I'd love to talk to you. Fill out an application to be considered for a complimentary half-hour love breakthrough session at lastfirstdate.com/application.